exactly 2 o'clock, and I would like us to start our meeting. But as I see on the list, it looks like we've got the quorum, and the members that are supposed to be at the meeting are already here. Now, let me make use of the opportunities, ladies and gentlemen, honorable members, to make use of the opportunity to welcome you to the Standing Committee of Public Accounts for purposes of looking into the annual report of the Department of Health, and it will be dealt with together with the Auditor General's report. Now, before we may start with the agenda officially, can I just get an indication of the members that are present, if they can please just introduce themselves, honorable members?
Thank you very much, Chairperson and honorable members and everyone who's in the meeting. My name is Matlhodi Maseko, and I am the member in the Standing Committee of Public Accounts. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Honorable Maseko.
Deirdre Bartman, member of the committee.
Thank you very much, Honorable Member.
Good afternoon, Chair. Wendy Philander, Chairperson for Health.
Thank you very much.
Good afternoon, Chair. It's Terry Comerica, member of the committee. Chair, I'm scheduled for load shedding any minute now. So if I drop off, it is because of that. I'm so sorry, but I'll reconnect as soon as the load shedding is over. Okay.
Thank you very much, Honorable America. Any other member? I think I've saw. Okay, if there is no other members of the committee, Mr. David, did you receive any apologies?
Chairperson, I received no other apologies, Chairperson.
Okay. Well, then, in any case, we are in order. We do have a quorum. We can proceed with the meeting. Now, as it's practice, normal practice, honorable members, when we look at the annual reports of the department together with the Auditor General's report, we first get a briefing from the Auditor General. Now, can I just get an indication, Mr. David, whether is the Auditor General available, and thereafter we'll also get a report of the Audit Committee.
Yes, Chairperson, the Auditor General is present. Ms. Liesel Kloo will present to the committee. And we also have the Chairperson of the Audit Committee, Mr. Ronnie King, he's also in the meeting, Chairperson. He will present, or he will brief the committee after the Auditor General has briefed the committee, Chair.
Okay. Now, what I'll do then, honorable members, without any waste of time, I'm just going to hand over to the Auditor General to give us a briefing. Auditor General. that is led by the Honorable Minister Mbombo, as well as from the staff side, it's led by Dr. Kute. Now, before we can allow the presentation to go on, I just want to give an opportunity to the Honorable Minister if maybe there are any opening remarks that she would like to make. Honorable Minister.
Good afternoon, Chair, colleagues who are here. I'm sorry I can't do my camera because already on load shedding to disturb the band. But the issue is about it's going to dispose. I'm using my iPad now. So on load shedding. And without wasting your time, Chair, Dr. Keith Kute is going to do the introduction. So rather than handing over to him now, introduce and come back, let me just do the opening so that when he takes over, then they can continue. Chair, as we know that in the morning, we have done the other parts of the report, and now we're focusing on your part, of which is it's a 2019 report. So it's something that happened almost 2 years ago, because it ended on 31st of March 2020. So it doesn't take COVID into cognizance so that the members, in case they slip and then keep on asking us about the COVID. No, it doesn't. It was prior to the COVID. It would be difficult for us to keep on talking, without touching the current. But we're talking about what happened in 2019. It is the year, Chair, it was the year of the elections, which is at that time, we're in between of whether some of us were coming back or not. So when it was the beginning of another term in office for the government. Also, it was the year that the HOD who retired was retiring. So the new HOD, Dr. Keith Kute, who was the DDG at the time, was taking over. It was also the year to celebrate, because it was the year we also got a clean audit, actually, I think the second one. So far, it's the only department that has ever had, Department of Health that has ever had a clean audit in South Africa. We are not naive in regard to celebrate only the finance part of the clean audit without looking whether we will have achieved what we're supposed to achieve, which is the indicators related to the health outcomes. Because it was the year that actually we've seen that most of the health outcomes, like around the children in terms of the survival, where at least they could reach their 5th birthdays, and also for their mothers to be able not to die during childbirth and also during pregnancy. And also it's the year when we've seen even some of the other activities, for example, National Health Insurance Bill, that was part of the public hearings where we volunteered to the national that we want actually to pilot the universal health coverage. At the time, already I had engagements. We used to have host meetings, officials, and also us as political heads to the Eastern Cape and the KZN, visiting each other, identifying areas where we could be able to pilot the universal health coverage as part of the whole society. In as much as that you might see in some areas where it will say so many regular expenditures, but in overall, the mere fact that we ended up having a clean audit, it does show that in some of those, without necessarily trivializing all of some of those, but it shows that the threshold was not as such up to the level that the AG could be able to give us a finding. And then lastly, Chair, it was also the year where we were focusing much as well on the infrastructure, because in some previous years, many years, we find that our infrastructure monies were not utilizing all of it. But during that year, we made a point that we utilize all our infrastructure. We have to do things differently in terms of at least providing our implementing agent, which is the Department of Public Works, and their contractors, to see which ones that we want to prioritize among of many of the infrastructures that we want to build, which ones that we could be able to do. Hence that year also we have done a lot of sword turning, which is the fruit now of that. It's going to be this year, which is this year. I've got as many of those that we initiated in 2019 that are now will be opening. Like for example, yesterday I opened the Lensburg Clinic. So thank you to the team under Dr. Keith Klute, because it's not easy for the health. Health has got many indicators, and some of them, they don't make sense. So I always feel sorry for the AG where they have to say, this is what we are doing, and this is what we're supposed to do around in terms of the auditing processes. And then for us, we'll ask, does it matter whether the child was born at 36 weeks or 37 weeks or 40 weeks? You cannot keep on wanting us to give us a finding just because that child was born at 40 weeks. And because 9 months for us is 9 months, whether it's a 2 weeks before 9 months or 3 weeks before 9, just making an example. So we do know that we have been quite difficult in regard to that, but it's too much. And even and as much as that, their focus will have been more on the district health services programs and others here on their central. But even one district health hospital or health service, one district on its own, like Cape Winelands, it's quite a huge responsibility where the staff has to make sure that they put all of these things in place. And let's watch for 2020-21 a financial report where it has got an additional layer of the PPEs. And then wait for 21-22, it will have an additional layer of the vaccines. But Chair, thank you very much for this opportunity. Thank you, Department. Over to you, Dr. Klute. Again, thank you for a clean audit, the first of its kind. Thank you.
Chairperson, may I proceed? Chairperson, may I proceed?
Yeah,
yes,
and then you introduce your team.
Yes, Doc.
Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you, Chairperson. Thank you, Minister, for the introduction. Really, I'm standing humbly before you as a committee, all the members. And I will do two things. I will give you an introduction of our team that is represented this afternoon in this meeting, and I'll make a few introductory comments. So let me start off with Mrs. Bernadette Aris. She's the Chief Director for People Management. Ms. Krishna Lowe is working in our management accounting section, working very closely with the financials and the budget administration. Then Ms. Esme Isaacs. She is the Chief Director for Supply Chain. Then there's Mr. Eugene Brown. He works in the area of infrastructure, and he's the financial manager supporting the infrastructure team. Mr. Glenn Carrick is our current acting Chief Director for Finance. Then there is Dr. Chris Valabji. He's the Chief Director for Strategy. Then Dr. Laura Angeletti Tutue, the Chief Director for Facilities and Infrastructure Management. Then there is Ms. Ronelle Gous. She is a Director for Supply Chain Policy. Then there is Mr. Saleh Ahmed Khatri. He is our Deputy Director for Revenue. Then Ms. Santi Roy. She's a Director for Supply Chain Policy Implementation. And then there is Mr. Simon Kay. He is the Chief Financial Officer, but also the head of our corporate services. So, Chairperson, this is a team of people, and I am really indebted to this team of people for the report that we could put together for 1920. I stand in front of you with a couple of introductory comments. Firstly, this was the last financial year with Dr. Beth Engelbrecht was the accounting officer. So I oversee the audit process for activities happening in the last year of the previous HOD's term. She's put a lot of things in place, and she's continued a lot of good work, and we are reaping the benefits of that with the investment that's been made over years. Secondly, as an incoming accounting officer, it was a disrupted year, and it's very clear from all the reports why we are only doing this report with you now. But I really want to commend a few very good relationships that we've got during the year. Firstly, it's the Office of the Auditor General, to Liesel and her team. We are on first name basis. We're meeting one another. I know the audit process and the Auditor General process with all her team members and all her managers inside out. Liesel, thank you so much for the way that we can engage. and how we do it. Then Ronnie, and on behalf of the audit committee, Ronnie, I really appreciate the manner in which you've welcomed me as an accounting officer as well, and the manner that we can engage on our quarterly engagements and how constructive in our engagements are. So thank you for that. And then Blanche, you and your team, and Stefan and everybody with internal audit, it is crucial that we get all of this together. So as an accounting officer, Sir Chairperson, I take my role as the accounting officer to make sure that I must be informed by combined assurance entities about that the resources that's been given to this department and entrusted into the department and my care as the accounting officer is effectively and efficiently used for the best benefit of the citizens of this province. I take that duty and responsibility humbly, very seriously. I've got an incredible team of people that is helping me to achieve that and for oversight. And really what we're about to discuss with you is a combination of us taking that role seriously, welcoming the engagement with the Auditor General, internal audit, the audit committee, and oversight committees like yourself. So thank you very much for all of us being able to be here with you to have a discussion about our annual report. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you very much, Dr. Klute. Now, honorable members, I think what we are going to do now, the report was sent to all the members timelessly. And as you know that in terms of the report, we are going to be dealing with section C as well as section E, or part C or part E of the report. Part C, if we may start with it, start from 103 on the electronic report that I was sent, and it ends at 116. And part E start from 159 and it ended 163, and thereafter there are annexures, which is more the financial part. Section C, honorable members, it's the governance section. Now, if maybe there are any, I take the report as read by members, so I'm going to allow honorable members, if they would like to ask question on part C of the report. Can I get an indication of those members who would like to ask questions on part C of the report? Honorable Van Vogel.
Thank you, Chairperson. I'm not sure, I just need clarity. Did you say on part C from which page?
It's 103. It starts from 103 and
Okay.
it ends at 116.
Okay. So my question then on part C, page 106, Chair. No. Just for now, let me skip that one, Chair.
No question on part C. Thank you very much, Honorable Van Vogel. Now, Honorable Nkondlo.
Thank you, Chairperson. And good afternoon to yourself and the team, and also good afternoon to the Minister, the HOD, and the team. On part C, Chairperson, I would like to understand in page 106, my question there, following the table list of the strategic risks, just want to understand what's the extent of sexual harassment in the workplace in terms of it being a significant risk in the department, and what is done to prevent it. And then on page, same page, for me, it relates to the issue of aging infrastructure and health technology. I just want to check if we can be furnished with a detailed report on the state of the facilities in the province and updates on renovations and refurbishments, so that one at least can understand which hospitals are in a worrying state and what are the plans to renovate them, especially given, I think, some of the limitations, especially on infrastructure project, that are placed by, the COVID protocols at this point, Chair. And then my last two. Yes, my last two, Chair, on page 111 on human resource, I think one would like to understand how is the department intending to minimize its reliance on seasonal workers, and what currently may be hindering the department from employing permanent staff than the man used on seasonals. Maybe they can give some insight into that. And my last one on the same page 116, Chair, is that in terms of the implementation of preferential procurement policy, can we just get an indication of the progress report on this element, and what are the delays in as far as providing some kind of a progress report in terms of the implementation of the preferential procurement policy by the department? I will end there for now, Chair.
Thanks very much, Honorable Nkondlo. Honorable Xhego.
Thanks, Chair. Mine is on page 106, where it speaks about the approved fraud and corruption plan. Now, what I want to understand is that, can the department readily say that this plan works effectively if we still have cases that are stated on the following page, where which is 107, regarding fraud and corruption? How effective is this plan in terms of how the department would assess it? And then on page 107, for the 2019 and 2020 in the table regarding the nature and investigation outcomes of 6 cases that were closed, there is one case of fraud which was referred to or reported to SAPS. What did the case involve, if we can get specifics as far as that is concerned, the one that was reported to the police? And then on page 116, regarding the table there on the code of good practice, there where it says developing and implementing a preferential procurement policy, the answer provided there was a no. So what I want to understand, has there since been progress there in that particular category? And then when it comes to when it comes to the rest of the criteria of code of good practice, the information was noted as not available. Now I want to understand, is the information now at this reporting time probably being available, so that you would share some light with us? And what is the reason for that the information was not available? Thanks very much, Chair.
Thanks very much, Honorable Xhego. Department, HOD, responses from the questions by Honorable Nkondlo as well as Honorable Xhego.
Thank you very much, Chairperson.
So can I just indicate, sorry, no, you're going to speak now, George. Can I just indicate, Chair, that whilst I understand that we are coming to the second committee, although it's the same report, just to reflect that all the questions that Member Nkondlo is asking us is the same questions that we received in the first phase of us responding to the report: the sexual harassment, the updates on the renovations, the seasonal workers, the preferential procurement, and all of those. So, Dr. Klute, if probably we can just sum them all together in regard to that, instead of, because I don't want to, I'll come back to that, because we already responded. It's the same questions. Yeah. And then there you can respond to Member Xhego about it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Minister. Thank you, Chairperson. On sexual harassment, as the Minister said, we were asked that same question in all of these questions. Actually, we were asked in the Standing Committee this morning. So the answer in the sexual harassment is we have a process on recruitment and selection to determine whether anybody that comes into our employ has been found guilty of any offences. It's part of a vetting process. And that is whether they've been dismissed or disciplined in any other department for similar events or sexual acts, misconduct, and then also police cases. So there's a vetting process before somebody's employed. When we're actually in the workplace, we have a very clear process of encouraging everyone to report sexual harassment. We have a zero tolerance for sexual harassment. We have a very strict disciplinary process. Anybody that is being accused of sexual harassment, we do preliminary and precautionary suspension. We do a rapid investigation. If there's any substance to the things, it goes to a disciplinary process. And in the disciplinary process, if found guilty, sanction of dismissal is what we're looking for in sexual harassment. So zero tolerance. We also have an awareness program of making everybody clear to say that they must step forward to be open about that. The report of facilities, we do normally have a list of facilities attached to our annual report. This morning, the Standing Committee had the resolution that we will forward that Standing Committee. If this committee prefers, we can also forward the same report that we sent to the Standing Committee to this committee on all the facilities and all the progress with relation to renovations. In terms of the sessional staff, I made the point this morning, sessional staff for us, we have people that's employed on contract. Contract is mainly the big areas of contract is when young doctors starts working as interns or community service doctors. It is a placement via legislation and regulation for a period of time. So they're not permanent employees. They are the mechanism for employment of those doctors are contracts. Also doctors that enroll to become specialists, they are registrars. They are learning for the specialty. They're employed in contract positions. So contract position is a reality of our situation. The big issue is about using people via agencies. We have a pilot and we have referred that to, if the member would want to actually read it, it's on page 100 and anyway, so it's in the human resource section in section D, where we have a pilot where we are looking at, instead of employing people via agency, we create posts in the department for an internal agency. We rotate staff, and therefore we take our dependence on agency down and using the utilization of that money for employing more additional people so that we can deploy staff in that way. So that is a very clear strategy from our side in terms of people that are working as non-full-time employees in our department. On the preferential procurement policy, and that's both to Member Kondlo and Member Cheko, it is that at the time of writing this, the Provincial Treasury released in October of 2019 a very clear set of guidelines in terms of preferential procurement policy. So we have a process in terms of good practice that we apply that in terms of our standard processes for all our procurement processes for everything we do, and the BEE compliance is incorporated in each of our practices. So that is the process where we are currently in relation to all of those specific things. And the process in terms of the progress, we have obviously, since we've done this report, put systems in place, and we definitely are implementing a preferential procurement policy, and it's implemented in our guidelines based on the Treasury regulations that we are following. Then in terms of the question about the effectiveness of fraud and corruption, sir, the fraud and corruption prevention plan and implementation plan, in our estimation, is an effective plan. And that the cases that you see there is few cases, and it is a plan where we actually heighten the awareness of ethical behavior. You will see in this chapter as well. We put a big store on telling that we expect people to behave ethically, but at the same time, we have systems in place to be able to detect if there is any untoward practice. Again, if we pick up any untoward practice, we investigate, we encourage whistleblowers, and this engagement with the Provincial Forensic Services is really about the cases that we have to be able to follow clearly on each of the cases if there's any fraud, and in the case, the one case that you're referring to, then to refer to SAPS. I'm going to hand over to Mr. K, just to give you the details of the case that was referred to SAPS. Mr. K?
Thank you, HOD, and good afternoon to the Chair, the Honourable Minister, and the Honourable Members. The case, it was a while ago, but what generally gets referred back to the police is fronting cases, but the cases and the details of the cases are handled by Provincial Forensic.
Mr. K?
I think we've lost you, sir. Mr. K, we can't hear you. I think there's a network problem on your side.
Yeah. Chairperson, as Mr. K says, that is...
Proud to switch off the camera as well, because with the load sharing becomes difficult.
He's
I think you can switch off the camera because we lost you. I think you are alive. You are back to life now.
Okay.
Mr. K is still off.
So the detail of that case, sir, Mr. K is saying that it is handled by the Provincial Forensic Services. Can you, Glenn, can you just quickly just give us the detail of that specific case, Glenn?
Afternoon, honourable members and Dr. Plitter. As the CFO was saying, it's quite a long time back, but I would like to confirm 100%, but I suspect it is a case of where a supplier, in terms of the BBE Act, was alleged to be fronting, and based on those findings, we did agree with that, and then Forensic Services actually handles all the referrals specifically to SAPS. But I would prefer to come back to the committee with to be 100% correct, but I suspect that is what the case involved.
Thank you, Mr. Carrick. Chairperson, that is the details, and hopefully I've covered all the questions. Thank you, Chairperson.
Thanks very much, Doc. Then, honourable members, if there are no further questions on Part C, I would like us then to move to Part E of the report. Honourable Batman.
Thank you, Chairperson. I only have two questions related to Part E. On page 206, Table 4.3, Conditional Grants. At the bottom, it speaks to a note, Human Resource Capacitation Grant. It speaks that insufficient funds available at the National Department of Health to reimburse the department for the short funding of 2020 medical intake, 186 posts as previously committed. What does that mean? Do they owe us this money? This 12 million is, I think it's 12 million rand if I'm reading this correctly. Are they going to pay the 12 million rand to the Western Cape Department? And if not, why not? And on page 223, under note 5 of the annual financial statements related to the training and development amount, it also indicates the increase due to bursaries offered to nurses for postgraduate studies on a study by assignment basis. Cost of these qualification modules also increased by more than 8% during the current year. That's a little bit more than inflation, and I just wanted to find out, Did modules change? Is it general, the cost of the items? What made that amount increase by about 8%? Because I think inflation's just over 6%, if I'm not mistaken. But I'm open for correction on that front. Thank you, Chairperson.
Thanks very much, Honorable Partman. Honorable Ngondlo.
Thank you, Chair. On Part E, okay, Chair, I just want to know on this matter of under expenditure in 203 as it relates to COE. What could have been, and I think this is a question one always asks year in and year out when we get to this, the delays in filling senior posts. Which are these posts, and what are their implications to service delivery? So that's my first one, Chair. And then in terms of underspending in as far as health facilities are concerned, can we be provided which projects were affected, and also which facilities by virtue of that underspending could not be maintained if those were due to maintenance projects, and what is happening in correcting that situation? And then, Chair, moving from that, just want to check on page 226 under debts written off, especially on the ones on salary overpayment and the supplier debtors. Can the department just share with us what happens here? How did the salary overpayment occur, and what remedial action was taken for this not to recur, similar to the supplier debtors, Chair, if that could be explained. And then on 239, on the local content policy, I just want to understand from the department, since the details of the current and in prior year irregular expenditure, that from the department's side, what is their standpoint on the application of local content policy? At this point, are they applying this particular policy? And if so, or if not, what are seemingly the challenges in that regard? And then the last one, Chair, is on 252 on the planned construction not started. I just want to understand, I think on the Falkenberg Hospital, since according to the report, it was affected by unavailability of funds. How is this situation? How did this situation came about, and what's the remedy to date in terms of trying to secure funding, especially in this current financial year, to continue with this project? Let me end there, Chair. Thank you very much.
Tomorrow morning with rural, right? I see a message from.
Thank you, HOD. Can we get a response from those questions from the honorable members?
Yes, Chairperson. So I'll take it one by one. I just want to make sure that I got all of them correctly lined up. Just bear with me. Sorry, Chairperson. I just want to start from the first one. Just trying to keep my pages together. Okay. So we're going to start with a question from Member Bartman. Sorry, Chairperson, I just wanted to find the right place in terms. Okay, no, I got it. I got the right place. Sorry about that. Just trying to figure out my way in terms of all the pages of what's been asked, and I work my way systematically from one side to the other. Okay, so the first question was then a question related to the issue of the payment and what is the implication of the interns that was not covered by the national department. So basically, Member Bartman, what we are saying is we have a process with the national department. They ask us, can we accommodate interns for intake? We indicate to them that we can accommodate interns on the premise that we receive the appropriate financial allocation to be able to accommodate them. What we had in the end is the interns arrived. We did not get the sufficient funding, and for that financial year, we carried a deficit of just short of 12 million rand against these posts. The financial year closes on the 31st of March. There's no ways of recouping money from the national department. What we've done is for subsequent years, we've made very clear that we cannot take an unfunded mandate in terms of interns, and we've subsequently in the other years, in the following years, has stuck very clearly to not taking a commitment for which there is no money. So that's the answer on the first one. Then there was a question by Member Nkondlo. That was on page 203. And as I understood it, it was an issue about the delay of filling of senior posts at emergency medical services. And at the bottom one is slowing of nursing, but I'm going to take the nursing delay of senior posts at emergency medical services. Specifically in this instance, it was a delay of filling the director post for emergency medical specialists. We had a process of advertising. We didn't have sufficient quality. We didn't have sufficient applicants with sufficient experience to be able to do that. You must imagine running emergency medical services, and the requirements we place on that post is very high requirements, and we didn't have sufficient people. So that's a specific post, and it's the director for EMS. On the contractor issues, and I'm assuming you're talking about the issues related to contracts being delayed, and that was the aeromedical transport to patients. I'm probably going to ask Simon. That Krishna, do you have the detail on that specific item on 203? Krishna?
No, doctor, not at the moment. I have that specific detail. Sorry.
Okay, but I mean, I think the general point is air medical transport services to patients is helicopter services. We are asking them to do helicopter visits to go and pick up people that needs to be airlifted, that is critically ill, which in terms of an ambulance will take too long for them to come here. What we've done is in this, we have then have stricter criteria to make sure, because it's quite an expensive thing, so we put stricter criteria in place in terms of that specific issue for the air medical services. I'm assuming that addresses Member Nkondlo's questions on page 203. If I can then proceed on to the other questions, I will just take them as they occurred in terms of the pages. So I'm going to go to page 2223. That's Member Bartman's question around training and development. And there was a specific question about why the bursaries for postgraduate studies by assignment, that the qualification modules have increased by 8%. Mrs. Aris, can we have a specific answer on why that is above inflation and 8%?
Thank you and good afternoon, members and the chairperson. Just to confirm that this is a process. We offered bursaries and we identified very clearly nurses that already is in our service to do the speciality training. And so therefore this is a higher costing than that. In the meanwhile, so that's for that particular year, just to confirm that we have reverted back, that the college will be doing that, and now we are paying much less. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Aris. And then page 226, there was a specific question about debts written off, and it was due to salary overpayment and then supplier debtors. So there was a question about debts written off around salary overpayment. How does a salary overpayment happen? And then supplier debtor, that debt being written off. Krishna, have you got details on those two matters?
Apologies, Doctor, that will be with Glenn.
Oh, with Glenn. Sorry, Glenn. Can I ask you if you have the salary overpayment and supply debtors on page 226?
Yes, Dr. Clitter and honourable members. Okay, so salary overpayments. The main scenarios that these can occur is when a staff member resigns, and unfortunately, due to the admin process involved, they're not completed in time before that person leaves, and they are still paid a salary. You will notice that this did reduce from the prior year to 3 million to 1 million, but it's still something that we are working to control. With us being a decentralized organization, larger organization, and hand that over to a debt collector. This is just part of governance. So although we've written off, we have not stopped trying to recover these funds from the individual in this case. So that's around salary overpayment debt. In supplier debt, this and my supply chain colleagues might be able to expand more, but in general, what happens here is we would have a contract with a supplier and they are not able to provide the product as agreed in the contract. We then have to go and purchase that item from another supplier at a higher cost than what we had agreed in our contract with our supplier. We then raise an invoice for the difference of the balance of the increased amount we had to pay, and we raise that as a debt and try and recover that from the supplier. In this case, so that is the main scenario in this, and unfortunately in this case it just reached the point where we had to write that debt off, but once again we will hand over to debt collectors in all scenarios. Thank you, Dr. Clitt.
Thank you very much, Glenn. And then on page 239, there was a question of local content and the local content policy being applied incorrectly. This is all on the list of irregular expenditures. So I'm going to hand over to Mr. K. I'm going to hand over to Mr. K to just have a conversation about the irregular expenditure generally. And he can decide how to respond to the local content policy issue and the local content being applied. Mr. K, over to you.
Thank you, Dr. Kluti. My apologies, Chair. I had a slight technical malfunction, and so I won't be turning on my camera if that is okay with you. So let me deal with the local content. This particular, or part of this particular batch had to do with steel at a point in time. And there was a requirement for local content in steel, and unfortunately we weren't able to produce steel to the extent that was needed. And so this one relates to that. I've also had a very interesting experience, not here, but local content actually also revolves around baked beans. So there are all sorts of very, very strange and strange elements to local content that unfortunately sometimes at a decentralized level people may not fully understand and fully comply with. Obviously, when these are identified, there is a training process that gets kicked in. The supply chain governance team run a number of training programs to just ensure that Sorry, Chair. Continue, Chair.
Yes,
Okay.
please, you may continue. I don't know what was the disruption there.
Sorry, thank you, Chair. So there is a series of programs that are run, both from the supply chain management perspective as well as our internal control units. So Dr. Kluti spoke earlier around certain layers of assurance. What he didn't necessarily refer to was the internal level of assurance. Our internal level of assurance is really in twofold. The first one is management control, and that is dealt with in terms of our delegation frameworks, and that clearly articulates who is supposed to do what, where, and when. And the second one is we have a dedicated unit. We call them the DCUs, but they are internal control specialists who are deployed from a central level to go and, what we say is they go and test the puckies. So they actually go and test for compliance at institutional level to identify irregular expenditure. But more importantly, it's all good and well identifying irregular expenditure. You need to be able to train the people on why it is irregular expenditure and how it needs to be
The network
corrected.
is not very good. That's why I don't know whether it's me.
Thank you, sir. So I think what Mr. K was referring to is that we have this internal team. So firstly, that specific instance of local content is when you have abnormal situations. So I think the question of the member was, what's our approach to the policy? We fully implement the policy, but we in certain instances come across very unusual circumstances for local content that was not foreseen when the policy was put in place. For those unusual circumstances, this team that we have, the internal audit team, they pick it up, and then they see, oh, you didn't follow there. There's some training, correction, and say, how do you deal with it in future? And that's besides the fact that the supply chain team pulls it up. Chairperson, I think that's all the questions that were posed. If I've missed something, I apologize. I try to keep track on each of the pages where the members ask. Thank you, Chairperson.
Thanks, Doc. Just a follow-up on the issue of intent, Doc. You were saying that your intent is informed by the national intents based on their requirements or based on the request that they've made to you. But then what is the provincial government's own intents policy?
So the Chairperson, let me just clarify that. We have gazetted intern posts. And you must understand the Health Professions Council comes to our province. They come and assess a site. They accredit the site for a site to be able to host the intern. So you can't just willy-nilly host the intern. At that intern, when they place there, you need to be able to provide the exposure that they require to become a qualified doctor. Therefore, they need to have certain things that they can learn. They need to have supervision in each of those areas. Their skills or their competencies have to be signed off. Therefore, at each of these sites, when the site is accredited, we also have an intern coordinator at each site. And we have a set of posts that we make available, that we fund for that function. This request is when the National Department had the surplus of interns to place. They come on top of that to say, can you accommodate interns over and above your normal intern program? It's in that place where we say, A, we need to go and see, is there accreditation? B, is there supervision that we can do? And C, do we have the money? So we indicate to them, we already have 300 interns. You want us to take another 100 interns. We need extra money to do the balance. That's where the shortfall came from. Chairperson, I hope that explains your question.
Thanks very much, Doc.
Chair. Chair.
Minister, Honorable Minister.
Yes, just a FYI, just to add, because some of the questions that generally were being asked, because I understand that it becomes complex when it comes to even the training for all, not only for doctors. Whilst Dr. Klute is explaining in regard to the interns, which is they've already completed their academic work at the universities, now they need to finalize their vocational requirements in order for one to be able now to go to be a ComServe. So he's explaining that part, which is the custodian of such in regard to the placement is at the NDOH. But also what he's explaining is about the accreditation of the sites by the professional body, which also applies to all other health professionals. Similar with the nursing, with the pharmacy, with the physio and all of those, but the most ones where they will also need the ComServe, because it's talking all about the interns. After the interns, they go to the ComServe. But with the other professions like nursing, it's a similar thing where some people say that, why don't you take whatever? Said, no, we've got so many accredited sites. So if, for example, even with the interns, if we say Tygerberg is accredited for 70 interns, it means that they've already calculated how many beds, and also in terms of how many interns that should be within be servicing those beds and to be supervised by, because they need to work also under the supervision and also the rotation to each and every discipline. Meaning if now the discipline they have to rotate, let's say they have to be in the gyne for 4 months, it means that there it is expected that they could only accommodate, let's say 10. And then understanding that within that gyne, there might be 6 that will be accommodated, let's say for nursing. There might be maybe 4 that are coming from, let's say, physio and all of those. So the point that we're trying to make is that it's not as easy as about, you are short of staff, why don't you appoint them? It's also about, it becomes part of us as the learning site for all the health professionals in all categories and all working as a team. And if it so happened that you ended up not placing people that are not accredited, then it means that there'll be a problem when that person is completed and then supposed now to get to be licensed to practice and to find that was not working in an accredited site. It was just a FYI, Chair.
Thanks, Honorable Minister. Any further questions, honorable members?
I was going to also add to, I think,
Honorable
who asked about, Dr. Klute responded about the local content. Also, again, in the context of health, it also becomes challenges because there are others where you might assume that it's a local content, because there are many of the other, like a corporate or companies where they say that it's a local content, only to find that it is a local assembling, but the content is not local. Just making an example, in one of the cases that I was busy with, it was about the assembling the, the equipment for drip, for intravenous therapy, for example. Where you'll find that they say, no, we produce here in Century City in that company, it is a local whatever. Yet within the Department of the Trade, it's not regarded as such. It's because they take all these pieces, buying them from elsewhere, and then they assemble them. So it's not necessarily defined as a local content. So that's why people have to work it also as well with the Department of, I'm talking now for the companies, with the Department of Trade, so that they could be able to understand that there are other aspects where it's not actually defined as a local content. Similar with like with the pharmaceuticals, where some of it, like now we're talking about the vaccines, talking about the fill and finish for J&J. So one might argue that actually we're not making that vaccine. It's not, because we get it as like a frozen kind of, and then we microwave it and then get some spice and put some spice and then put it in the containers and then we dish it out. Therefore, it cannot be defined as a local content. There are many of the complexities that one have to look at. That's what I always advise the companies. Thank you.
Thanks very much. Honorable Van Vogel. Honorable Van Vogel. Honorable Nkondlo.
No, Chair.
Oh, sorry.
Mine was
Sorry,
not
Honorable
a new
Nkondlo.
question. I wanted to follow up on what the minister.
It looked like Honorable Van Vogel
Yes,
is
Chair.
back. Okay, continue with yours,
Oh.
Honorable Nkondlo, then we'll go back to Honorable Van Vogel. Honorable Nkondlo.
Should I continue?
Yes, yes, please.
Okay, should I continue, Chair?
Yes, yes, Honorable.
Okay. No, I was saying I wanted to follow up on what Minister is raising. Thank you for the response, especially on the local content. And I really hear, I think the rationale that the minister or the observation the minister is making about the health sector and the limitations in terms of what is local content in that space. And I'm just saying, Chair, perhaps it's something that we can take up, because I think Minister would be correct in terms of such an engagement is not necessarily going to be with the Department of Health, but with trade and industry, because I think it's important to understand in terms of the goods and services being procured, especially those goods that at this point, one finds in other industries that DTI has even had designations, because you would then be able to say what is possible in terms of the South African manufacturing capacity, within the health sector. Perhaps it's something that we need to consider, so that at the end, as Minister is saying, because you may appoint somebody on local content, but you find that perhaps it's assembly, but the actual raw materials and all of that are still exported. So I just wanted to appreciate what Minister is saying, and saying maybe that's an issue we must take as part of our resolutions as the committee. Thank you.
Thanks. Honorable Van Vogel.
Thank you, Chairperson. Chair, you are welcome to call me out of order if I'm at the wrong section, but because of bad network, or let's say connectivity problems, I missed certain parts of the meeting. So I do have a question on page 163 under part E. So are we still under part E?
Please continue. Yes.
Thank you so much, Chair. Chair, page 163, point of reference, we identified material misstatements in the annual performance report submitted for auditing. So what I want to know is what material misstatements were identified before the department corrected them. Then, Chairperson, if we can go to page 205, current payments. I want to know whether any approval for this over expenditure was granted by the Provincial Treasury, and if not, what process was followed for this expenditure. And then page 209, recoverable revenue. So what are the details of this debts written off and the reason thereof, and for how long did the debts exist? And then my last question is under, it's page 210, the cash flow from operating activities. What were the funds earmarked for, and from which program were these funds taken? And then how much was for compensation for employees? Thank you so much, Chair.
Thanks, Honorable Van Vogel. Department.
Thank you very much, Chairperson. So I will go to page 163, the material misstatement, point number 22. The Auditor General looked out of those indicators that is under Program 2, and that is for the average length of stay in hospital, and then took a sample, and at one hospital found that the sample of what was recorded on the system and what was in the file didn't correspond. So for instance, it says the patient stayed for 5 days, but in the file, it was 3 days. That's one found. And in another hospital, they found 2, where there was and that was out of a big sample. So what they said to us, that because the system said the person stayed 3 days, but in the file it was 4 days or 5 days, they gave us an opportunity to fix it. What we then did, Honorable Van Vogel and Chairperson, we went to all district hospitals and we looked at what is recorded on the system and what's recorded in the file. And we corrected that. They came back, they did a sample of 2 other hospitals and found no discrepancies. So that explains the question on 163. The issue about on page 205, which is compensation of employees, I'm understanding the current payments, insufficient funds. It's exactly the same question we dealt with, unless I missed Honorable Van Vogel, Chairperson. It is the issue about the interns. So I'm not sure because we've answered that already. We've paid up to 12 million against the interns for which we didn't have money, but we incorporated it into our expenditure. If I understood that question correctly on 205. And then on 209, irrecoverable amounts written off. And that is to the tune of, it was 7 million the year before. It was 3 million this year. I'm going to ask Mr. Carrick again, if he can just tell us what irrecoverable amounts written off is and explain that. I think he did touch on it earlier, but Mr. Carrick?
Sorry, Dr. Kluser, just getting the mute button. Yes, so the cash flow statement is just another way of reflecting the actual cash movements of the amounts written off. So it is focusing on the items that we listed there, the bursary, supply debt, salary overpayments that have been written off. It just shows the pure cash movement in a particular year, that element in the cash flow statement. So we can go back and go into more detail of the specific amounts of the note where we detail if they wish, but I'll be guided by them.
Yeah, no, thank you very much, Mr. Carrick. So just for Honorable Van Vogel, where we spoke about all the lists and all the items, this is just where the cash, it's the monetary value of all those things. And Mr. Carrick has explained, we followed up, we follow up, we follow up. We get to the point where we really try and get it out of somebody, and we get to the point where we say all our efforts to get the money has not yielded, and then we move on to write that specific debt off. So, but this is just a numerical amount. And you can also see that it became less, from 7 million to 3 million. So that means we're following up and getting more returns, and less are we writing off irrecoverable debt. And then on 210, there was an issue of net increase, decrease in cash and cash equivalents, and that's cash flows from financing activities. Glenn, do you just want to give us a technical explanation of that? I've understood it from you, but just maybe on 210, the second last issue there.
Dr. Kluser, I'll just get to 210. Once again, I think this is related to the 210, sorry, just give me a chance.
The cash and cash equivalents.
Cash and cash equivalents. So cash and cash equivalents, literally it looks at the money that you have in your bank, and it's what's driving this from one year to the next is specifically at year end, where did we stand? So it also, so depending on what day your year end ends and the timing of your final payment runs, you do have payments that go off. So as soon as we release those payments, we regard it as paid, but sometimes that money might only physically leave our bank account and into our supplier's account 2 or 3 days later. That's just to do with the banking system as such. So you can get significant fluctuations in your cash flow statement related to this. It is quite technical, but that's in a nutshell what happens here.
Yeah, thank you very much, Chairperson. I'm happy to respond if I misunderstood any of the questions. Thank you, Chairperson.
Thanks very much, Doc.
Chair.
Yes, Honorable Van Vogel.
Yeah, Chair, I'm not clear on my last question because my question was, I think, I'm not sure if I was misunderstood, but what I want to know is what the money was earmarked for certain programs. What was the money earmarked for, and who, from which program were these funds taken? If you go to page 210, I want to know that.
Chairperson, I think we
surrendered to revenue fund.
It's surrendered to revenue.
There for me.
Okay. Okay, so it's on a different page. So thank you for clarifying. I completely misunderstood what you asked. So this is surrendered to revenue fund. There's an amount of 46,000 the year before, and this year it was 760,000. Glenn, can you just explain what it means for us to surrender to the revenue fund? And if that amounts of 760, when we surrender to the revenue fund, what amounts are they? And were they supposed to be used for any specific purpose? Glenn?
Yes.
Yes, so Dr. Klitte, in general, yeah, so the cash flow statement is a strange beast, but let me focus on what surrendering funds are. So if we do not utilize our full funded allocation, that money needs to be surrendered back to Provincial Treasury. We then go and we'll then request a rollover in certain of those funds where we meet the specific criteria and get that money back normally in the adjustments budget in November or December of the year following, November or December following that financial year closure. Or sometimes, which has been the arrangement, we've requested them to push it to the outer year because of funding pressures. So that's generally, it's just a mechanism that funds that have been made available to us that we have not utilized, we surrender back to Treasury, and it's just good governance that way. So in essence, we will only keep the funds necessary to keep our operations running. Any surplus funds, it makes sense to go back to the Treasury so that they can utilize that money and reallocate it as they see fit in terms of cash flow management.
Thank you very much, Glenn. So member Windvogel, so what that would mean, it talks back to once we've done everything and we've settled our books at the end of the year. And you know that we have indicated to you other parts of the document where we have underspent on what specific reason, and for each one we give a reason why it's underspent. That money does not get lost to us. We surrender it back to the revenue fund, and in our negotiations for them for the next year, I think we explained this morning in the standing committee as well, when we then over-recover revenue, against what our budget was, it goes to Treasury, but in our negotiations for allocation for the next year, a lot of that money that we as health surrender gets reallocated to us in a future year. Thank you, Chairperson.
Thanks, Doc. Honorable Windvogel. Kabile. Honorable Windvogel.
Chairperson.
Kabile or Kanye Usabuza.
Okay.
Okay. Ngos. Thank you very much, Honorable Windvogel. Honorable members, any further questions? If there are no further questions, I think then we have kind of come to the end of the presentation and the discussion of this annual report. HOD, are there any remarks maybe you'd like to make?
Thank you very much, Chairperson. Just really to say to the Scoper, we really appreciate this as a full circle of accountability. We take this function very seriously. Last year, you asked us to engage with the standing committee to follow up on things. We did follow through. We take the oversight process of the audit committee very seriously. We respect Mr. Kingwell and his team members. We follow through. We work very closely with internal audit and on the basis of our internal process itself, as Mr. Kay explained. And then very much we welcome the engagement with Auditor General in relation of being an accountable organization. We would like to believe that our performance speaks to that accountability, and we've welcomed oversight in terms of how we do things. We believe that is the essence of good governance. And thank you so much for the interaction. I would like to thank the members of this team, Chairperson. This was an extremely difficult time to go into COVID, and for this team to be doing the RFIs, to work with the audit team, to conclude this, to go back. It sounds very easy when I explained to Honorable Windvogel that there was some misstatement found in people being discharged and being captured on the system. For people to go back to every hospital to correct all of that in the space of 2-3 months, it takes phenomenal effort to be able to do what we do. So it's easy for me to stand here as the figurehead and take credit on behalf of the organization, but it's really just to acknowledge every single person for the incredibly hard work they put in. All the people you see on this call are incredibly committed, ethical people that work for the best interests of the citizens of this province. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you very much, HOD. Before I maybe ask the minister, just for record purposes, honorable members, as I've indicated in the beginning, that this hopefully the department is not going to go away, because for record purposes, I've indicated this was a public meeting, but up to now, I didn't get any indication if there are members of the public who wanted to ask questions, unless maybe there might have been changes. Mr. Davids, are there any members of the public were you aware of that are in attendance?
Yeah, Chairperson, there so far has been no indication of any inputs from members of the public during the meeting, as well as the request via the media adverts prior to this meeting, Chairperson. There were no inputs received from the members of the public, Chair.
So I take it that there are also no members of the public present as well. If there are any, we allow them to ask questions.
You are correct, Chairperson. There's no members of the public in the meeting, Chairperson, from what I can see under the attendees list, Chair. You are correct, sir.
No, thank you very much. Honorable Minister.
Thank you, Chair. The committee, the audit committee under Mr. Kingwell, the SCOPA, even if in the absence of the AG. Thank you very much for that. We take this serious because as much as that SCOPA will always be, we don't come to SCOPA often compared to when we have to come to, for example, to the standing committee. But you mustn't think we take it as very light or not much having teeth, or also that probably they've got so much teeth, because health financing, it's actually part of the system within the health system, because the health system is made of systems. So the health financing, it is crucial. In as much as that the staff who are involved in the finances, normally others are in the 23rd floor, we hardly see them, or we even hardly see them in our media hits, but it's another function, it's another system on its own, which will never be able to succeed, be it delivering of the medicine or infrastructure, if that system of health financing is not there. That's why the role of the SCOPA in making sure that we utilize the monies, taxpayers' monies accordingly. We appreciate that. The other people that I need to thank is the public on their own, because the revenue actually that we are talking about, the major revenue that we get, which is in the Western Cape, we normally get about R500 million per annum. This is the patient fees, most of it. It's the people who pay for those kind of services, where sometimes they get those letters to pay 25 rands, and for others, of course, understandable, they might not be able to pay. We waiver all of those, but we thank them for us, specifically in the Western Cape, that people see that there's some of them that there's no need to go to the private. They might go to us and then they'll pay those money. So that revenue, the majority of it comes from them, in addition to, of course, the people who might have donated, or even the donor. So thank the public for providing that those revenue. And then lastly, on monthly basis, just to show how health financing is so crucial, monthly basis, the department through the HOD and his team, They have to appraise me in terms of where we are every month. That is the good practice in regard to where they are, especially in the risk mitigation. Similar with the audit committee every 6 weeks. Similar with the AG, where they also do the same thing, even continuously, not to the previous reports, but even with the current on quarterly basis around that. So thank you for them for being able to even have to, because for us as the political heads, most of the times we normally say, accounting officer, it's a accounting officer role, but as a political head, that they even have that patience to keep on orientating us in order to be able to understand. Because at the end, we often brag about, yeah, I've got clean audit, my department, yet in some instances, some of us, generally, not here, might not even know how hard work it entails when we have to look for that particular speculum or BP machine that the Auditor General is saying that we might have a finding for. So thank you very much for the effort, and also thank you very much for making sure that you keep us up on our toes, and specifically the outsiders like the audit committee and also the AG in addition to the members. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks very much, Honorable Minister. AG, is the AG still with us?
Yes, Chairperson.
Mr.
Thank you
David.
so much.
Any comments
I
you
can
would like
see
to make
the AG is
as
still
we
here.
are about to end?
Yes, Chairperson. Thank you so much. From our side, we really appreciate the invite that you have invited us to support you in your accountability and governance responsibility. So we are always available to support you. Thank you so much.
Thanks, AG. Audit Committee, Mr. Kingwood.
Thank you, Chair and members. Thank you for the questions and the role that you play. On behalf of the committee, we just thank the input from both the Minister and the HOD to acknowledge the role of audit committees. We do it because we believe in the work they do, and that's important, that we respect their responsibilities as we do with the standing committees. Just so we look forward to next year. It won't be so long. It's 6 months down the track, and we'll see you again. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you very much. Now, honorable members, if I may then ask if I may ask the department, the audit committee, the Auditor General as well, they can please be relieved so that we may continue with the business of the committee. Thank you very much. We highly appreciate your presence, and we also highly appreciate the support that you are giving. And of course, the question that we are asking is not a question to try and catch you up or to try to be difficult. It's just making sure that we are actually ensuring that there is good governance in the province of the Western Cape. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chairperson. Thank you, members.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you and goodbye.
Thank you very much, honorable members. I saw how quickly the numbers dropped from close to over 30, and we are now down to 10. I just wanted to check then if there may be any resolution that you'd like us to take in terms of the report that we presented to us. Honorable Van Vogel.
Thank you, Chair. Perhaps if we can, what is concerning for me, I mentioned it earlier this morning to the department, is the 38.3 million irregular expenditure. If we can perhaps get a full report of can we ask a full report from the department with detail on each of these 548 cases.
Okay. No problem. I think that actually makes sense. We can just have that report in detail in writing. Does not, if maybe you having received that report, we think that there are questions that you'd like to ask
Yes.
from the department, we will then make sure that maybe we can call on the department to come and give us the explanation. No, that's fine.
And then there's another one, Chair.
Yes,
If you can also get a report on how was a contract awarded to a wrong bidder, which contract was that, and how was it completed? Because that is something on page 239. So if we can also get a report on that. Thanks, Chair.
Thanks very much, Honorable Van Vogel. Honorable Nkondlo.
No, thank you, Chair. For me, I think following up on the local content application in this health department, perhaps one would be interested for the department to just maybe give us a heads up on the areas wherein it has been difficult, if any, for them to source local content on the various goods that they procure. Because I think for me, it will be important to understand that in light of the feasibility or applicability of the local content within the frame of health products in this instance. So if they can provide us that in as far as the health portfolio is concerned, that what has been their challenges in going out there to source for local content products or services in the health space, which are those particular goods, so that at least we get to understand in context whether indeed in this department local content policy may be a problem to sort of implement or not. Thanks, Chair.
Thanks very much, Honorable Nkondlo. Take a note of that. Further suggestions, further input on resolutions? If there are no further resolutions, then, honorable members, that means therefore that we have come to the end of the meeting. May I make use of this opportunity, honorable members, to thank you very much for availing yourself to come to the meeting, especially as you know that the department came in at a time where all other departments have done that. So you were able to put aside your valuable time and you were able to come to the meeting. Thank you very much. The meeting is adjourned. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chairperson.
Bye.
Bye-bye.